Okay, so I had a pretty crazy day at work today. Um, just in terms of it was a realization that I had um, kind of over the weekend. So today's Tuesday, and I'll kind of just lay it out. So we had, so it's bonus season. It's like end of the fiscal year, that whole thing. Um, So I had my performance review and everything, and it was it went well. I think that the biggest thing that the biggest obstacle for me to overcome is I'm at a primarily fundamental shop, and being a quantitative person and kind of trying to move things in that direction. Um, there are just a lot of hurdles to get over in terms of I approach things differently than fundamental analysts or fundamental PMs or whoever it is. um, and I think there's a little bit of a struggle in terms of are we hiring all of these quantitative people, including myself, with a specific goal in mind and a specific route and specific things that we want them to work on, or are we hiring them just to say that we have quantitative people and we're just hiring quantitative people because everybody else is. um, so I think that was I just think that there's a little bit of a lack of direction where it's they kind of want us to come in and kind of figure out what we're supposed to be doing, and which is great, but then you kind of do it and they don't understand what it is that you're doing or if you're doing anything. um, so it's kind of a weird spot to be in. And I've always been of the mindset of you know just you do good work and you produce good results, and everything will kind of come based on that. And I think in the long term, I think that that's definitely true. Um, but I think that kind of what me and my team have seen working, at a place like where we're at, where it is fundamental, and they all take a fundamental approach. Change is just it's kind of hard, and it's hard to wrap your head around the fact that people do things differently than you do, or especially when it's arguably a better method than if you're just gonna read the news and look at a couple statistics and trade based off of that, or if you're really looking at data and doing what the model tells you, and it it's a little harder to um, kind of relinquish that control, if that makes sense. So I think as far as me, it was my first, I wasn't even there a full year, so it was like a token bonus setup for me, which is what I was expecting. It's more the kind of the potential that I want to see going forward, and the I want to be able to get to where I want to go, and that's kind of the big challenge for me. And I just kind of always was of the mindset of just do good work, produce good results, and that'll kind of speak for itself, and you will eventually get there. And I do think that that is true. That's absolutely still the case. I'm totally not denying that. Especially in the long run, you have to do good work to survive in the long run, obviously. But I do think that there is something to like something that I was just kind of surprised about when I got into work was, um, like I've just always looked at it and assumed that it was a meritocracy entirely. And again, over the in the long term it is. But in the short term, and short term can even be like a year, 2 years, or even 5 years. But over the course of a career, like you don't make a career off of that. Um, but I've been surprised how much, like, in office politics, I guess is kind of the way to put it. Like I've been surprised how much that plays into like actually what you see in terms of like how people value you at work. And there's a lot of there's just a lot of like internal marketing that has to go on, and especially like the position that I'm in, where I'm kind of trying to like come in and tie myself to different projects so that I can maybe like make my stamp on that, or projects or departments or whatever it is, like come in and add like uh, you know quantitative impact to them. Um, so it's just been a really really kind of interesting position to be in, where I think that there were other people who were really good about kind of um, talking about what they do, and like I made an impact here, and I made an impact here, and I made an impact here, and I was doing this, and I was doing this, and I was doing this, and all the while, like none of those projects really materialized or really produced anything. Um, but they gave the appearance of like being very, very involved and adding a lot of value and being tied all over the firm. And what I've kind of like woken up to is perception is reality. Um, so if like people think that you're really involved and people think that you're adding a lot of value, that's really all that matters, to be honest. Um, in the short term, at least, like, especially like to the people that matter, or like the people who make these decisions in terms of like expressing your value to the firm, aka compensation. Um, Perception's reality. So like what they think is like, if they want to make decisions that way and like miss out on certain things, or not understand certain things, or like however they want to do it, that's um, like that's on them. And it was kind of like I just, and my whole team is of this same mindset. Like we all kind of woke up to this thing. Like we had a huge conversation about it today, where we all, me and uh, the other person on my team, like it's two of us. Um, we both independently arrived at the same conclusion of like, oh, we've been playing the wrong game. We thought the game was do really good work, produce really good results, and people just won't be able to deny it. And that is true, again, like over the long run. Um, but the years go by fast. Like years, you know, um, and yeah, a lot of it just comes down to like marketing and making yourself known and communicating it. Um, and it's kind of stupid on my part too, because like I knew that, like that I had to communicate my value to, like, if you have great ideas but nobody knows about them, it doesn't matter. So it's definitely a shortcoming on my part there. But it was just really interesting to kind of, it was kind of interesting and like disheartening a little bit to kind of see that this approach that I had really kind of looked down on for a while, and just be like, oh, it's snaky, it's just like not it's not like the way that I wanted to operate, like almost like taking credit for people's work or just making yourself seem more important than you were, or just like attaching yourself to people's work. Like somebody does something and you say like, "Oh, we did that," whatever, when you had no part in it. Like just things like that I didn't really um like just that those are things that I like didn't want to participate in. I didn't want to operate that way. Um and for the entire time that I've been there, like me and my teammate, we've kind of been like there's been animosity there in terms of like just we were very like anti that approach and just didn't like operating that way. We were like, we'll never do that. Um, and then to see that actually be in the end like the winning strategy is very, you kind of like, it makes you think, where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, perception's reality. And you can't even be mad about it. It's just like, oh, okay, yeah, we're playing a different game than we thought we were. And that's great because we just, for the entire year, like I've gotten to witness a bunch of people who are really, really good at playing the correct game. And, it is disheartening because, um, like you don't want to have to like compromise your principles or compromise like the integrity of the work that you're doing. Um, but like we're playing a different game than we thought we were, and it's kind of an interesting position to be in, and you can't be mad because like we have the template now. Like there were certain people who made it seem, who were very good at internally marketing themselves to a lot of different people, in terms of like just communicating and exaggerating their impact and you know their value and like all these different things that they were tied to, um, and it got rewarded like very, very heavily, which is great because it's a completely replicable thing. It's like we have the blueprint now, we have the template, we know exactly what works, and we're smart. That's a game that we can easily win. Um, So, the tricky part I think for this next year coming up in 2026 is going to be adding that on top of, because I'm not willing to like just abandon the work that I was doing. Like I still want to do good work. I still want to do quality work that I stand behind and that I really believe in. Uh, so maintaining that is very, very important. But there is this whole other game of like do things that are very, very visible that are kind of just fluff things, like just like you got to be very, very visible, you got to be very, very vocal, in everybody's face. Like the results over the long run will speak for themselves, but you know the analogy that I was using is, Coke advertises, and they don't, like, you see a Coca-Cola ad and they're not necessarily expecting you to get up off the couch and like go buy a can of Coke. But there's a reason that I just used Coke for that analogy, because like their ads are everywhere and it's like one of the first things that pops into your mind. And we kind of need to take that same approach, like my team, in terms of like we have to have the good product, but we also have to have the recognition and the awareness and the um, just like the place in people's minds of like, yeah, these guys are producing results, and like they're doing this and they're doing this, and like a lot of these things won't directly transfer to good rock solid results for the firm, but they will indirectly, because when somebody needs something, they'll come to us. Or when we have an idea that we want to implement, they'll know, like, oh, they're doing all these other things. I see them all the time, like the whole thing. So it's just kind of an interesting position to be in, where, like, we kind of just woke up to this thing of, like, perception's reality. Everything is really just marketing. If you have a good idea, it doesn't matter if you can't, like, you have to be able to get it out there. Like, you have a good idea, you want to be able to implement it, and you want to be able to be compensated for it. You got to be able to communicate it. And to be honest, like, I think that the reason that we have gotten this far is because those things have been accurately communicated. Um, Accurately communicated and communicated well in a form of communication that the people we are communicating to are used to. So, in other words, it's like, communication is not what you say, it's what the other people heard. And I think that we have done a really, really good job of, making presentations and, like, doing, having meetings and, like, doing everything in a very, very easily digestible way for the people that we have been working with. And the part that we kind of unintentionally neglected was all the people that we don't necessarily work with very directly or very often. We kind of thought, like, oh, these people will vouch for it. He'll see the results. Like, they'll see the results. And that is true to a certain extent, but there's a lot of wood to chop there still, and it's low hanging fruit. It's just easy work that might not make a huge impact, but it's very visible. There's a lot of, like, quantity. A lot of it is probably just, like, fluff work that may or may not go anywhere, but like, it really is kind of brand awareness for our team within the firm. Like, if you want people to listen to you, if you want, whatever, and I think that being able to get to where we've gotten so far has been very, very impressive, and we have achieved that at the scale that we're at. And kind of what we're finding out is that we can scale that impact by taking advantage of that really low hanging fruit that's, like, maybe not necessarily, like, super quality work, but it is, like, it's like sending out an email blast with just some insight. Like, that's not really going to go anywhere, but it does, like, kind of start planting seeds in people's minds of, like, oh, okay, yeah, like, we have, like, we can utilize this, or we can do whatever. And especially, like, top level people who are just, they're not involved in any projects. If we can kind of just tie ourselves to a bunch of different projects and really just, like, make yourself seen and be like, you're involved here, like, you must be adding a lot of value. That's kind of, the name of the game in terms of, like, the shorter term, and it's a winning strategy, apparently. I think that there are meritocracies out there, but I don't know if there are pure meritocracies, and that's kind of what we're finding out, where there are, unfortunately, like, games that you have to play, and I think that you got to be very careful to not compromise what you wanted to do in the first place, like the reason that you got in the game, which for me was doing quality work, producing quality results, and creating things that I really believe in and stand behind. But then there is, the other stuff of, like, you do have to be in the meetings, like, you do have to have conversations with the right people, like, and I think that it's, where we have been able to get in such a short period of time is pretty incredible. But we were kind of missing that one piece of the, like, we've been able to get in the room with these people who normally, like, that just wouldn't happen at my level. Like, I wouldn't be able to talk to, super, super senior guys and be like leading meetings with them and be, doing all this stuff. But the piece that we missed that, we kind of thought, like, we're missing the link between that and like the decision makers in terms of, like who really decide your value for the firm. And we thought that the result would kind of just like permeate and establish that link. And, and it like, we messed up there because, we need to like explicitly do that and be very, very good at doing that. So, it was really kind of interesting to like wake up and like come to that realization. And, the more I've been talking about it all day with, my team, but, the more we say it out loud and the more that I talk about it, the more it kind of seems like, oh my gosh. And I think I'm becoming like better at explaining it too, but it just kind of seems like, it's like, duh. Yeah. Like, obviously that's super, it just seems like common sense now, which, it is to a certain extent, but it is, I think without all the details and everything, it's probably getting oversimplified. But, yeah, it is just kind of, like, to summarize, waking up to that realization of, you got to do more. Like, you can't just because we've had really, really good results. We've done some really, really impressive things. We have to do more. Like, we have to communicate that. We have to, establish, more of a reputation, which I am a little bit disheartened by, knowing that carries a lot more weight than I thought it did. But, at the same time, I'm very happy that I have come to that realization this early. So yeah, overall, pretty interesting day at work today. I thought that this would be kind of, just an interesting topic. And, it's kind of also like a really, a bigger day for me in terms of, like, I feel like I just figured something out and it was paradigm shifting. So, also wanted to document that. So, yeah,